Hello, hello, folks. We got people joining in. I see their names coming in now. Derek, the people have shown up to hear us talk all things Sauna Village today. Hi, Grace. I see you there. Aaron, Eric, double Erics. We got David Jones with us. Callie, Brett Ferber, Ben, Adam. Welcome, welcome, everybody. Let us know where you're coming in from. Leo's already on it. He's like, "Hi, I'm here from Brooklyn, New York." Leo, gosh, I love to see you on here. We got Tom Raff. Tom's joining us probably from Seattle. I know Tom's over there on West Coast. Let us know where you're coming from today. And we are, just so you know, we can't see you. So if you're in your PJs still, if you're got dogs barking behind you, whatever, no problem. Derek and I are seeing that you're with us. We are so excited that you're here. We spend these rooms where we kind of get in together, and this is going to be around the coffee table together. So we want to connect. We want to hear from you. We want to know where you're coming from today. Man, I'm seeing the UK in there. I see Vermont. Oh, Tyler's here. I think Tyler's here from Bozeman, Montana. We got Ben from Rochester. Derek, people are here from all over. How are you feeling today? You're here in Duluth with me in the Great North on a real sunny, warm fall day. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling really excited to be here. I'm based in Minneapolis. For those of you that don't know me, I come up to our Duluth headquarters about once a week to meet with the team. So, for the most part, I work remotely for Cedar and Stone. I'm on a lot of Zoom calls just like this with our clients and folks that are interested in chatting. So, it's great to see such a wide array of people.
Folks from everywhere. So love it. I just saw South Africa, Cape Town, South Africa from Warren. Amazing. So glad you're here. Global audience today. We're gonna kick off. We got a lot to cover. And so as we get in, I want to come back to this idea of yes, you're on Zoom here with us. Yes, this is a webinar. No, this is not watching YouTube sitting back. We want to see you engage. We want to hear your questions. We want you to pop those into the Q&A window. Any comments when Derek just drops a bomb of a statement that you're just like, I would reshare that, retweet, requote. Yeah, comment in the chat window. We want to discuss with you today. We're going to go all things sauna villages and this concept that we see moving and scaling and growing throughout North America, throughout the world. We're going to give you examples of how that's working, people that we know who are doing it, and some of the strengths and even the weaknesses to that as a model as you're thinking about starting businesses like this. I am here today with the incomparable Derek Plegman. Derek, so fun to have you with us. Derek leads our sales processes and management. You've worked with folks from literally all over the country, hundreds of experiences like this, deals like this, people who are thinking and working in the market, and you have a deep passion for all this, which we're going to hear about in a minute. So just some kudos to you and why you're joining for the room here and getting everything going. But we want to hear from you guys. Who are you and where are you coming from? Lindsay's going to share a little poll with us that we always kick off with. We want to sort of know, where do you sort of align in the world of sauna? In what ways are you interested in the business of it? Maybe you're an enthusiast. You've been to a cool sauna village or a spa somewhere in the world. You found a public sauna somewhere and you're like, this is the kind of thing I love. Maybe you're somebody who's in process of thinking about starting a business. You're somewhere along the way of, this is a good idea, to I'm trying to open my doors. Or you're like, actually the majority of people in here right now, from what I'm seeing, is you're currently running something. Your doors are open. And if your doors are open, we are digitally high-fiving you, cheering you on, saying tremendous work. The movement is growing. The things are happening. We're so glad you're here. So we got 63% of the people right now who are doors open, 64%. Awesome. About 36 who are in this spot of, hey, I'm working on it. About a third of our room is, I'm getting something happening. I'm growing. So Derek, we got a room of industry pros and industry entrepreneurs and people sort of coming into the world on this. I think it's going to be a good conversation today. Derek, give us a little bit from your perspective. How'd you get into this? You're a guy who, lives in Minnesota. We've worked together for years. But give us just a little bit of that origin story, because I think most of the people in the industry sort of have that pivotal origin story moment where they discover this and they say, I want to be a part of it. What did that look like for you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I really am unique to kind of cedar and stone because I didn't grow up with sauna. So unlike Justin, who's kind of it's been a fabric of growing up, me, it was something I found later. So during college, I was kind of on my wellness journey, as I think most people are, at kind of exploring new ideas. And I started with an infrared sauna, which I feel like a lot of people can relate to. So that for me was something that I went to, 3 to 4 times a week as I could afford it in my membership. And it wasn't until I found Cedar and Stone, I worked as a sauna guide for the company in 2020. And that was my first experience doing more traditional Nordic sauna. Of course, I had heard about it. Like as a kid, you're going to hotels, you kind of know that it's around, you know it's at the YMCA, but it wasn't ever something that I super cared about. During my studies, I initially began as kind of a pre-med student. I was interested in health, looking to kind of have my own dermatology practice. A lot of my introduction to wellness was kind of for clearing my skin and caring to better my health. I went vegan. And so I was just exploring all of these things. The wood burning sauna for me, though, was where it really started to click. That was where I experienced a shift in my lifestyle and particularly some of how I was thinking about winter in Minnesota. I think a lot of people who experience winter climates can relate to dreading winter. And that for me was a shift kind of out of that, where I started to feel that I was experiencing that season, that 6 months out of the year in Minnesota in a different way and experiencing those benefits to my well being. So that's what got me into sauna. Professionally, I've kind of worked for a number of other kind of mission-centered businesses, Lush Cosmetics with bath bombs, kind of the bathing culture there, moving to Tesla, centered around sustainability, technology, Peloton. That's where I found my interest in kind of community-oriented businesses and mission, and then to Cedar and Stone, where they poached me to head their sales. So that's a bit of kind of my process and experience to the work. I feel really privileged to be in the space, and it's something that I'm, particularly invested in. Part of my studies shifted to my capstone for entrepreneurial studies was around opening a bathhouse. So it's a unique perspective when I'm engaging with our clients because I can say, hey, I understand what it's like to put together a business plan. I don't have that business plan in the world yet for
Yeah.
X, Y, Z, so that's some of the way that I engage with sauna now.
I love it. And Nils along the way in the comments was like, infrared, what? Big smiley face. And for you, Derek, it was an entryway. And I think there sometimes is a little bit, especially in sort of cultural niches, a little bit of protectionism or cultural preservationism around, when we say a word like sauna, what does that mean? Or when we say banya, or when we say hammam, like these are all cultural expressions. And we've dove deep on these webinars and in other places around that. And so we encourage folks to really learn, where did those things come from? And when folks are coming from a health perspective, when they're coming from a wellness and how do I do this for my life, they might not enter through the door of cultural gift, pastime. They might enter through the door of wellness modality. And for you, that sort of unlocked this sort of deeper experience to discovering the cultures of bathing, discovering what that's meant. So it's really fun to sort of see that in you. And now we're getting to do that all over the place, all over the country, where people are discovering that more and more. Now, today, you guys, now that you know Derek a little bit, I want to make sure, A, if you have any questions, send them over in the Q&A window. We're going to make sure we're not going to save time at the end. We're going to answer them as we go. And then in addition to that, I want to get into this model that we're calling sauna villages. And I'm going to highlight something here. We did a webinar about a year and a half ago with Annette Scott, where we ran through some of the most popular or the most promising or the most sort of salient versions of business models related to sauna as wellness that we saw happening in the US. We have a whole hour on that. I invite you to go back and check that out. Lindsay will send the link there. And it starts with sort of anything sort of real scrappy. I'm gonna do a mobile sauna rental business that's sort of young and interesting and new, all the way up to huge bathhouses. Leo, who's on this call, runs World Spa over in Brooklyn. Uh, 50,000 square foot bathhouse, amazing, beautiful space. In between mobile sauna rental and huge bathhouse, there are a lot of iterations of what people are working on, are thinking about, and are launching. And today, we're going to get really specific. We're going to get specific in the area that is right in the center here. We're going to unpack Sauna Village model as it relates to existing businesses, adding sauna to what they're already doing, nature retreats, kind of popping up these villages or clusters of wellness amenities, or even more than that, on top of or next to other businesses, or creating it as a bit of a partnership residency model that's more than an event. And I want to be real clear about that, of what we mean when we say this and what we don't mean. What we're trying to communicate is around what are successful business models that are working, that are cash flowing, that are creating staff, that are creating systems, as opposed to marketing expenses and running events and doing pop-ups as a one-off. And we say that because those one-off moments, though they are fun and they can get a lot of attention and they can be really good, uh, unlike a food truck where you can have one little food truck that serves hundreds of tacos over the course of an event, in these spaces around sauna, you can only host as many people as you have bench seats for. So you need people to come to you, not for that 4 minutes to get the taco. You need them to come for you for that hour to 2 hours to do the experience, to go through the cycle of hot, cold, rest, hydrate, repeat. And so it really lowers your volume. And so the longer you're there, the more you can set up in a space and return to it and draw people to you. I think the more likely those businesses are going to be low capital ways to launch, but higher impact and higher volume over time. So that's what we're going to focus in on today mainly. Derek, as you see this, you've worked with clients all over the country who have launched these, who have designed these. Let's unpack the model together. What do you mean? What do you see when we're sort of shaping this now? What are the benefits and what are the sort of contours of Sauna Village business model that you see?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so many folks that I'm talking to, we start with the idea of the mobile trailer, right? We're looking at usually a capacity that's pretty small. Sometimes people are saying, I want to start with something really humble, like 5 to 6 people, or that's after their initial dream that they wanted to pursue, which was the big bathhouse. And what I think a lot of people fail to realize in the space is how expensive the build out is for a bathhouse. And when people don't have access to capital in the key of millions to dollars, it's kind of like a this or that. And I think what I'm doing in a lot of conversations is saying, okay, there is a middle range here. So when I'm talking about sauna villages, I'm saying, what is a concept that we could do that's kind of location agnostic, right? We could pick an outdoor space, we could pick raw land, we can reduce some of the constraints when we're looking for commercial properties, and even a studio model that could maybe intersect with an outdoor courtyard. And the interior build out is just for the locker rooms or the check-in or the shower. And what is a capacity that we can serve that's greater than 10 people, that allows us to see that revenue there and accommodate more traffic coming through the space. So when I think about kind of a raw land option, or I'm thinking about this, even something like what we're doing at Pier B Resort Hotel, we have multiple modules, multiple sauna cabins with a diversity of experience and space. Maybe these are different look and feel. They're different temperatures. There's different aromas that are used. Maybe some are public, some are private, some are social, some are silent. It gives us an option to start with even 1 or 2 modules, working our way up. So another thing I'm inviting folks to consider is, okay, what if this really pops off? What if this is something that's successful? How can we develop the properties concept to accommodate future modules? Let's say in year 2, 3, 4, what it would look like to continue to bring new modules there, finding ways of activation marketing. And I think that starts to feel a lot more exciting than this all or nothing approach that comes to the bathhouse, which I think can be really discouraging for folks. And that is kind of where I'm thinking, Justin, is that centerpiece for the sauna villages.
Yeah, I think that's right on. To distill that, 1 to 5 structures, oftentimes multiple saunas, sometimes also added changing rooms, hot tubs, different amenities that kind of come with it. Uh, and then I would say capacity wise, we're usually seeing something, again, more than 10, let's say 12 to 40 people. You're sort of wanting to get, and I would, if we can sort of double click and underline this, I think there's a magic that happens when you can at least hold about 25 people at a time. And the reason is for that is because you can host multiple different groups all at once. You can also separate, like Derek said, if you have multiple structures, um, different types of events happening. You can have a private group in one corner, and you can have a big gregarious bachelorette party in the other corner, and they're happily interacting in the space together. And once you get up to that volume of hosting people at a time, you can really begin to build systems and staffing structures to support those. And so as people are starting to kind of wrap their heads around this, scale is going to come with abilities to not have you do all the tasks of the day and to build out teams to make sure you're doing that. Just like in any restaurant, you need enough tables so that the kitchen can serve. And if you have a few more tables and the kitchen can keep pumping out, that often leads to more team, more staff, and more revenue potential over the time of the business. So number of spaces, capacity, and then they're often built offsite and delivered on-site. So it creates an ability, Derek, you said something really helpful, location agnostic. I think a lot of people get in this chicken and egg moment when they're thinking about a build out of like, how much does it cost? What's it cost to design it? Do I got to do all the plumbing and cut through concrete in the floor? And I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that in the 1 to 2 spaces I'm starting to look at right now. And so it opens up this opportunity to say, well, what if your constraints weren't the building that you're in and you have to design for one space? What if we were thinking more about an outdoor space that we could put buildings into, and then we have more potential spaces to look at? Now, are there complications? Yes, we make it sound really easy. There's utilities needs, there's drainage needs, there's permitting needs, there's a lot of things to think about. But if we can limit some of those, it can often help people move sooner. Kristen, I see your question here about technical background. We're going to get to that in a minute, specifically on that topic. And I think we're seeing a lot where people are sort of getting access to this in multiple different ways. They're thinking about outdoor experiences. They're thinking about getting more people in. They're thinking about how cold water access or water access is really different state to state. And they're saying, well, maybe we can be by a lake or a river or a pond. Maybe we can do this in a more natural way. Some examples that we see, I already, Derek mentioned our location here in Duluth that we've been hosting year after year. We continue to improve it year after year, so it's kind of grown. Some other ones that I want to highlight, and Lindsay's going to send these over in the chat. Earth Saunas over in Vancouver, BC, just launched. Love what they're doing. Love what their team's doing. They're doing some amazing work. Sauna House coming soon to Nashville or to North Carolina. They have locations all over in a bigger bathhouse concept. We're also working with them on launching a village in North Carolina later this year. That's super exciting. Framework out of Nashville, who we've helped again build a big bathhouse. They had a launch location. They're doing a second launch location now where that village concept or that additional space is kind of for them another inroad to come into their business. Highlight a few more. Lost Language Sauna coming soon to Chicago. Some dear friends, they've been through our Sauna Business Accelerator program. Find them over on Instagram, Lost Language Sauna. They're going to just blow up Chicago this winter. Sauna Camps that has opened locations in multiple spots, but have kind of home in Minnesota. They do a seasonal pop-up, kind of big residency at a camp. And then our friends over at Portal, they have a number of locations open now, but their Portal Denver location really is this kind of village model where it was vacant land, popped up, built out, established in a way that really sets this up. So we're seeing this happen all over the country. We're seeing it happen in multiple different locations with multiple different businesses, figuring out how this really works. Uh, Derek, talk with me about some of the strengths. What are the ways that you see this kind of like for that, put your business owner kind of hat on and say, what are the things that they're asking you about as they begin to sort of vet out multi-unit models like this?
hmm I talked about the one which is access to capital we see a lot and our ability to manage that where we don't have to look at such a full commitment to a build out cost. That's number one. The second that I think is comforting for folks is there's this sense of liquidity in an exit market strategy where we're reducing our risk for the concept broadly. A lot of people who are looking to secure those higher levels of funding are looking for, how do we kind of compensate for the risk of that. So having structures that are modular, that could be sold, that could be reused for another location, something where you could pivot to activate another demographic, another market. You have more flexibility there than the sunken costs to what is your brick and mortar studio. So that is of interest for folks. The scaling aspect, I think, is interesting too. For some of the folks that have done the bathhouses for us, like Alan Penn, for Framework, he had, a year plus long build out, right? And what are the ways that he can engage and field that market ahead of time? It's kind of a pop up with one of the modular structures that he set up. He's building brand awareness. He's getting people aware of what he's offering, getting them excited about the bathhouse. And then he lifted that sauna, brought it to the courtyard of the bathhouse. And so he's able to continue to use that in another way and activate his clientele much earlier than if he were limited to just all of the interior build out. The other thing that I'm thinking about a lot is water or your ability to engage some of the cold elements there. I think one of the things that was really interesting for us as sauna guides in Minneapolis when we did our pop-up location was people being really satisfied with just sitting in a robe or on like the Lal furniture, sitting outside with a tea in hand. There are ways that we can slowly build towards the cold plunges, the outdoor showers, putting it by, some naturally occurring water source to kind of circumvent some of our constraints around utility, ADA for cold plunges that are in ground, things like this. So that also starts to feel interesting from the modular standpoint because we can look at those investments down the line versus all in one in a studio concept. You're muted, Justin.
There are some great questions coming in. I want to hit a few of those as we keep going here, Derek. One is from Kristen. She's talking about, I don't have the technical background, so my biggest challenge around the village concept is what do you need on site for electric stove? Do I get wood-fired saunas? What's possible and what's needed for those things? I'll sort of hit it a little bit, and then Derek, feel free to add in here. Any publicly operating space is going to have some type of utility needs. There are very few of these concepts that are going to be without utility needs. And in any sauna space, you're going to ask the question of how do you heat it? Are you going to use natural gas? Are you going to use wood fire? Are you going to use electricity? Larger space, really big spaces, oftentimes big banyas. Other spaces are in some cases using natural gas. It's not as common in medium or small spaces. I see it occasionally. There's a couple natural gas sauna stoves on the market that kind of serve smaller rooms. So it is possible. Our friends at Alchemy Springs in San Francisco, they have some at their sauna garden in the backyard. Couple mobiles that I know have them. So natural gas is one. If you're leaning on wood fired, you're usually in a very rustic or natural setting. You're usually sort of willing to sort of do the labor that is stoking a wood stove. You're probably in a part of the country that has less burn restrictions or less restrictions around fire. And so, our folks in California, they're sort of very seldom, I think, doing wood fired as a concept. If you're thinking about electric is going to have plenty of sort of well-worn, here's the electricity you need. You're going to talk to your electrician. You're going to need to pull power to the location. Likely, you're going to have to run 240-volt service, and then between each sauna, between 30 and 100 amps, depending how big it is. And so that's going to be one of your big utilities needs for sure, along with water. You're also going to need power for lights, fans, iPads to check people in, a whole bunch of other things associated with it. But those are going to be real needs, Kristen, for you if you're thinking about a village model is how much power can you pull from the site? If you're working with raw land, if you're working with another business or another structure on the site that you can bring power over, that is going to be a thing. And you'll need to, I would advocate working with a licensed bonded electrician to pull permits and to sort of get the electrical ran over there for sure. Would you add anything, Derek, on utilities? Any thoughts there?
Yeah, I think the other thing is when we're looking at multiple cabins, we're not having to invest all of this infrastructure in one singular sauna, right? So that also is reducing our utility requirement for each of those. So if we're doing a 10-person sauna, maybe that has two stoves inside. When we're doing huge, like 50 plus people saunas, we're talking about like 6+ heaters, right? That are 208 volt. You're looking for three-phase power. That's a very different kind of infrastructure than something like this. It's simplified and can be added over time with service, expanding panel access, things like that. So that's where I go on electrical. I also think when we have multiple cabins here, we can do some that are wood fired, some that are electric. Again, you can break up and diversify some of that without having a commitment to all of those being the same. In terms of the water element, we see a lot of folks that are going for just like standard hose bib connection for bucket showers, pull down showers for a seasonal activation. In the winter months, of course, that's much harder to do. If you're on the East Coast, you're in Minnesota, you're looking for other ways to activate that. Those are the two main things that we're coming for. Then is kind of preparations of the site broadly. So as Justin mentioned, a lot of what we're talking about with folks also as a builder is bringing a fully assembled sauna onto the site. How do we support the weight of that? How do we support the drainage of that? And that's usually by way of either a concrete slab for the saunas to sit on or a gravel base with footings to support the weight of the structure. So we might also think about some ground preparations to support those. You have, more invasive and less invasive options there as you're looking at your land use broadly. And generally, people are also looking at where's an area for a lounge space or some kind of interesting deck setup or rest area.
So I'm going to come to another question here. Eric's asking, I want to keep going on these for a little bit. Eric's asking Sauna Village real life revenue examples / business models. So Eric, great question. Get to the heart of the matter. Do these things make money? Is this worth it? Is the juice worth squeeze? Is one of the ways to ask that. And I will say, think about it this way, and I'm coming back to our sort of larger chart here. Again, go to the other webinar if you want to deep dive on it. Big bathhouses, they're a lot of capital upstart. They do have a high revenue potential. They're also a huge operation. You're building a team. You're doing things in usually months and years to get it launched, and you need a lot of technical support. When we sort of go in the middle here, I think there's an interesting opportunity in the market to do something that is upstart costs of usually under $1 million, depending on what you're trying to do. And then revenue potentials that are oftentimes pretty real per year, if you can get enough volume going through the space. And so it is not uncommon for folks to sort of get to that sweet spot, 25 to 30 people, and build out a business that then on their top line revenue looks like something like $1 million a year or more, based on what they're trying to do in their area and how many guests they can come through there in their area. So we're not sort of investing 20 million to make 10 million a year coming out of there. We're investing 1 million or under a million to do a million a year. And it begins to be, like Derek said, a more scalable, more traction-based, more updatable version of that. So these are high-level insights, Eric. Most of that is from seeing data of industry professionals on this, from knowing people and having conversations, from running a business like that in our, on our team. But what I don't think there is great, because this is an emerging industry in so many ways. There's not like some easy to go to data source that shows you here's exactly how it works. I think you can find a little bit of benchmarks and comparables as you look at spa. It's tougher when you're looking at thermic bathing facility writ large to find that granular amount of data. So this is an area where I just want to sort of highlight, hey, I think there are some benchmarks, there are some things, but it's hard to go out and find those from some key core research. It's why we do what we're doing here. It's why we're sort of sharing some of this data here. The other spot I would go is the Global Wellness Institute. They have a bunch of research, but it's going to, again, be sort of global, high level, trend based, and not sort of specific business model down to the T of what you're looking for here. So a couple spots to add there, a couple resources to add. I hope that was helpful, kind of thinking through that. As you guys are thinking through this, Derek, there's another one that comes up around all this. And oh man, I'm seeing so many good questions here come in. One is, have you seen Sauna Villages partner with city parks for a permanent forest or waterfront location? Derek, talk to me about finding space, what you see, what hurdles you see people going through, what opportunities you see people have. We've worked with people in high density urban environments and super rural destinations. Let's talk a little bit about location finding.
Yeah, for the most part, what I've seen is people are looking to privately own the land that they're putting their sauna village on, or they're leasing space off of an already existing commercial entity. So that could be activating the back portion of a gym, like what we see Lost Language doing in downtown Chicago, when we're looking for areas, of course, a constraint for where we have open space. When we're in more of a rural concept, I expect that people are looking to have ownership of the land that they're making investment on there. I have seen people that have engaged their local like parks department. They're looking to do something in their area. I've not found those projects to be fast moving. I find that oftentimes those are working by leveraging community relationships for you to get there. Those are not ones that I have immediately that I've seen come to market and be successful yet, outside of what is maybe a pop-up. Like they allowed you to stay there for a weekend. You were there for maybe a week. I've not seen long-term residencies in kind of a public park or zone there yet from clients that I've spoken to.
Yeah, working with big public entities can be hard, slow, difficult in that you're often entrepreneurs want to move quickly, they want to innovate, and usually public settings are all about activation. So they'll say yes all day to you about an event, but when you begin to think about it as a longer term setup, you begin to go to public vetting, larger sort of settings that end up being, I think, a little bit difficult, other than a pop-up, other than a mobile kind of delivery model, rental model. Not impossible. We should keep working on it, everyone. We should figure out ways to get these, to get great bathing experiences in public settings all over. And depending on how patient you are, you might want to work with, like Derek said, more public facing or more business facing, business oriented spaces, or owning the land outright. I think that those begin to be ways that we see that happening. There's some great questions here on operations. We have a number of kind of thoughts on that. We have webinars that have been dedicated to running good operations here. I'd like to point you back to some of those. We won't be able to get to everything today on how to operate your business well, from booking flows to how do you staff things. But I will say on one of these pieces, specifically to staffing, is you want to build an experience that does create a good experience for a client, and that is likely at every restaurant that you've ever been to, somebody's wiping the tables, somebody's cleaning up, somebody's cooking food, somebody's preparing the space. And I think sometimes as people enter the space, they think these things print money. Wow, people want to go do a sauna thing, and then they just happen. People just book, and it's a little amenity that churns out money. And I would say that's what the YMCA at the gym has. It's just an add-on. It's an extra afterthought to people coming in the door. The people who are doing amazing experiences are making great food, setting the table well, making sure it's clean, and hosting somebody so well that they know all that there is about the ingredients that they put into the meal. It's great customer service. On these spaces, the people who we seeing it doing well use those same ingredients. They care a lot about the space they create. They care a lot about the experiences they create. They care a lot about customer service, and they care deeply and passionately about cleanliness. They want that space to not smell dank and musty when you walk in the door. That is a big turnoff to most folks who have never done sauna before, to walk into a space and be like, ugh, it doesn't smell clean in here. It doesn't feel clean in here. And so I bring that up as you think about labor for you folks who are kind of in this process, or you folks who are running, already have your doors open, keeping the place clean is the battle that is always being fought and has to be. And so account for that in your spacing and your staffing models. It's going to be more at the beginning. It's going to be more as you figure it out. And having a space where you get enough of these facilities all in one creates an ability, I think, for you to really hire the right people and specialize on how to do that, and getting people who are there to do all phases of it. Whereas if you're sort of only in the mobile rental business or a drop off or a pop up event, usually you don't have enough team members to add into those things. Derek, would you add anything else about, you've been somebody who's ran these spaces, coming in as we did a launch in Minneapolis for a winter. Would you add anything there to kind of team and staffing that people should be keeping in the front of their mind around a sauna village concept? What are the things that you find important for team members as they're coming on?
Yeah, I think I field a lot of questions around this, and for us, we have, kind of a mid-tier perspective on this, I would say. You have folks like Othership that are doing fully guided sessions. It's very much like a performance. We're activating the entire room, or Aufguss broadly, right? Then we have folks that look at it solely as an amenity. How could I make this like an Airbnb where folks have a pin to use the sauna, they come in and it's touch free? I think in this concept, what I think is most successful is you have people on site, you are answering questions for people that are coming to the sauna for the first time. You have folks that are checking in the way that you might think about dining service. Justin, you talk about this all the time. It's like coming in to make sure there's water in buckets and ladles, that people have water, that they're getting their questions answered around how long should I be in here? Is there a cold element that we can use? Is there rest? I think checking in on folks is going to give them the best experience. And they're kind of looking for like a prescription on how to use the space. So that's where I think one of the flaws of kind of self-guided is, unless it's very obvious for folks, or you have such a high number of people where you're seeing them go into different rooms, like you can kind of watch other people. When you're limited to 5 or 6 people, you don't have that as much. And I think people are expecting more of a kind of one-on-one or small group oriented activation or program from that perspective. Justin, does that address your question as how I might think about staffing?
Yeah, totally. Totally does. We got some great comments and questions coming in here. Matthew Laird, Matthew, so good to see you. He's saying, do a bit of demographic research in your area. Super helpful when starting up, making sure your site has enough folks within a set travel time. Crexi, Crexi, and LoopNet can help with this. Absolutely. Like do the gut level thinking, right? I want to see this thing. I have intuition and I have kind of that desire to make a thing exist, but also do the math. Don't just follow your heart. Also do the math and say, where is a strategic spot in my community, in a community, that this is going to work really well? Being either really close to the heart of all the people, being really easily accessible, or doing a thing that's so beautiful and such a destination that you're a magnet, you have gravity and you draw people to it. I think those are sort of two poles of the same thing of how do you make a business work. I think the sort of getting close to people, hugely helpful. We see it a lot, exciting about it. And sometimes you run into more restrictions because you're going to have to answer some permitting questions. You're going to work through city approvals. Destination spas, still you need some of those approvals, and you really have to be captivating. You really have to do something that's unique to get somebody to drive more than 15 minutes to come find you, to be a part of what you're up to. And so think about those things as you're sort of getting into like, where should I go and how that would work. So I would think there, uh, that to me feels like an important, who's your market? What's your vision? What do you really want to create questions before you land on any specific spot. There will be 100 people that will tell you, you should come here. You should do a thing here. Most of them are just saying, will you come be a part of my event? Will you add your cool thing? Will you add your cool sauna idea to my event? And you're saying, hey, no, where do I want to be long term for stability for our business? Um, as we're rounding our time here, Derek, I want to shift just a little bit. We've been in some really specific questions. I think they've been great. We're going to come back to a little bit more of those. You and I, as we started preparing for this, started talking a little bit about we see this as something that's trending in the industry, and I want to get to why. Why do you think this is seeing more traction right now, in addition to, you mentioned some very specific client needs, access to capital, speed to market, growth over time, exit strategy. Hey, you can always sell the units if they're small. It's hard to sell a bathhouse if it's not working. Uh, so talk a little bit, Derek, why you think this is happening in the industry, and maybe why you even think it's a great model for it to happen right now.
Yeah, I think for me, a lot of the reason that people are motivated to engage with sauna is because they're trying to build community. And when we're trying to build community off of 5 to 6 people in a sauna, in a mobile trailer, 8 people, it's a lot harder to host bigger groups. Or when we're trying to engage something like a membership model to have people coming regularly. When we're talking about a capacity of 20 to 40 people, I think that's a very different energetic experience when you have that many people in one place doing the same thing. That starts to feel much more inclusive when we're looking at, okay, is it a sauna plus yoga, or a sauna plus exercise or breath work, or these other kind of side dishes to the sauna of ways that you're activating it to bring people there. So for me, the other thing that I think people are interested in is being outside, being in nature. And these are ways for us to be outside versus what we also see a lot of bathhouses are trying to do is trying to replicate nature inside, right? We're seeing people that are like, what is the next and greatest, coolest way to do cold plunges? It's big, beautiful snow rooms where it's snowing inside. You know, when you're doing an outdoor activation in a 4 season climate, part of your year is a very different experience in the winter than it is in the summer. You're gaining diversity of experience just by engaging the seasons in different ways. It's part of some of my sentiments in my personal story that it shifted some of the ways that I think about winter. We're able to use these free elements and these open air concepts for people to look outside and see the leaves changing like we're seeing in Duluth here. You know, it's a different way versus when we're looking at a facility and a studio, it's very stagnant per se. That's why it's so important for you to do months to years long of design, because you want something that's going to feel evergreen and interesting for people to come back to or for special events. I think when we're in smaller, more dynamic setups like the sauna village, some of the heavy lifting will come from just what is the concept in place? Can we take advantage of the natural elements there? And can we also meet people with what their needs are? They're looking for community, they're looking for places to unplug. The ways that we know serve grounding and people feeling their best and in well-being spaces is outside. having fresh air, having escape from an urban environment, or thinking about, something that they don't have access to in their backyard or they can't replicate in the same way at a higher level. So those would be some of the reasons that I think people would be engaged in this. It's the community aspect, it's the nature aspect, and it is kind of easier, cheaper ways to have a diversity of experience through the seasons.
Yeah, it strikes me so often when, especially in cold weather climates, when you give people this experience of conquering winter, winter can feel depressing, heavy, dark. And yet, when we do these types of things, it's not a coincidence that many Northern European countries do this so regularly. It's so woven into the culture because it helps people feel that lightness. It was in your story, Derek, of I can get through winter in a way that is full of joy, not full of only struggle. Going rolling in a snowbank, going and jumping in the warm sauna, doing a cold plunge, and then sitting outside in your bathing suit and feeling like I can handle that is countercultural to much of American culture, to much of modern culture that keeps us attached to a phone, keeps us indoors, keeps our bodies sedentary. And so, there's pieces here that I think probably if you're on the call, you've seen that, you've felt that, you've had the experience of the sauna and the cold plunge, doing the heavy lifting of making you feel good. And Derek's sort of adding on here saying, yep, and often getting people into nature, fresh air, and seasonal experiences, it ramps that up even further. It creates that experience more. Now, I will also say there are harder parts of a non-controlled environment. There are not very many in inside bathhouses that have a big snow removal protocol like we do all winter, that have to manage ice build up around the cold plunge because it's negative 10 degrees. And I mean, it's intensely cold here. And so I think there's some components there where you do have to trade. You do have to sort of say, yep, here's what we're getting into, and here's what's difficult about it. But we're interested in signing up for that for these reasons. Um, I love that. I think it's a micro trend in the industry that we're sort of trying to raise the flag here and say, hey, you guys, take a look at this. Take a look at how this works. There's some questions coming in, Derek, that I want to ping back to you around these. Grace is asking, do you have any examples of multiple mobile units coming together to create a sauna village? I know this exists in places like Oslo. What are the benefits, risks of something like this? Derek, you take a little bit of a stab at that one. I'll add some thoughts too.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it can be a hybrid approach. I'm not saying that you can't have this same idea built on mobile trailers. I think that's really reasonable, especially for your first unit, because it allows you the flexibility to do some of those pop-ups when you're building brand awareness. I think in the long term, though, you're best suited to stay in one place. And that might also look like spaces that are more built-in feeling, that don't have that kind of temporary location. I think a lot of times when folks are trying to think about how they're going to charge for ticket price, your ticket price is going to reflect what people's expectation is of the environment. And I think there can be a feeling of kind of rustic or temporary or something where people might not be inclined to invest with you as much when they're seeing these kind of trailers around. There are also ways to conceal that. You can hide the hitch assembly. You can build decks around it. There are ways for you to kind of develop that. Even for us at our experience, if I can share, Justin, we're kind of retiring our mobile trailer that served us for the last 5+ years for something that we found a partner that we feel comfortable with being there in the long term. We're shifting to an investment of a more permanent structure going there in a modular sense where it could still be pick up and moved to a later date. So those are my sentiments I would share on, does it have to be mobile? Can it be something else? A hybrid of two? I think it will largely depend on the experience you're trying to offer your guest, and if they're driven by aesthetics or how important that is to your activation.
Yeah, and I would just add on there, I think it's a great question around it. Derek's right. We're doing that. We're taking a previously mobile space, replacing it with a more ADA accessible space. And oftentimes modular units, especially with wheels, have a hard time being ADA accessible because they're higher up off the ground because they need to go down the road. That can be a good first start. And if you're going to build a bunch of spaces and they're going to go to one place and they're going to live there forever, you don't need to add the expense of wheels. You don't need to add the expense of the trailer. You can trailer them there, set them on site. And you want to sort of build out that ability for a longer term commitment from the property that you're on. And so you're always managing risk as a business owner. You're always sorting through that. And one of the big risks is, can we be in a place long enough to make it worth doing all the work of getting something here and operating a business here? And I think that's one of the questions. That's one of the questions for sure about how do you make sure a place like this can generate revenue over time by limiting some of the upstart costs and by limiting some of the upstart risks. And that's the joy or the curse of launching something like this in your town, your city. Yeah. Tyler, you're asking a great question. You're in the throes of designing an epic bathhouse over in Bozeman. Any plans to design a modular bathhouse shipped in sections and placed on site? Um, yeah, I think it depends on your term of bathhouse, and what you mean by that. But when I start thinking about sauna villages, I think what's going to happen is we are going to create more spaces throughout the U.S. of all different shapes and sizes. We're going to have more little sauna coffee shop size spaces that are small and serve a few people. We're going to have more epic 10,000 square foot plus amazing facilities. Therme is doing like the Disneyland of thermic bathing that's going to pop up in Dallas and in Texas and in DC coming up here over the next decade. And when you say modular bathhouse, I think we're going to actually have more of these spaces like I would also see in some parts of Europe where you have kind of entry, check-in, lobby, bathrooms area, and then multiple spaces to do hot and cold experiences. And I would term that kind of, Tyler, like you're saying, modular bathhouse. It's kind of it's focusing the amenities so you don't need 10,000 square foot for everything, but you do need some amount of introduction to the space, welcome to the space, changing rooms, showers. And those are either fully built out and delivered to site. We have one working with Andrew and the team at Sauna House. We have 28 lockers, 6 changing rooms, uh, outdoor showers, changing check-in space in a 28 by 9 foot fully volumetric modular delivered unit and 4 saunas outside of it. So like that's a version of modular bathhouse that's going to pop up in North Carolina and be on site at a residency location over the next year. I think we're going to see more iterations like that that are kind of medium size scale, high capacity for turnover. And I think you're going to see those at beautiful landscapes. I think you're going to see those in urban environments that have sort of vacant lots that aren't being used that are going to be delivered and popped up. I look at what's happening in the UK with community sauna baths there. There's multiple versions of that that are kind of like one step up from the small. And I think we're going to keep seeing more of that here. I don't know, Tyler, if we're going to do fully click together module units. So then you just create some big thing, but maybe somebody's going to try that. So, Derek, any other questions you're seeing here that you want to hit in the Q&A or in the chat window? There's one about smoke saunas. Nils hitting that. Love this. Is it feasible to build and operate a traditional smoke sauna in the US? What challenges would likely one face? I haven't seen any currently active here. Great question. I know some people are trying, and I think it's one of the really difficult things because of fire safety concerns that in the US, we're a very litigious land. We're in a spot where making sure your liability risks are lowered is difficult and hard. And so I don't know of any public saunas that are open yet that have smoke sauna as one of the focal points there. I know a couple people are trying and thinking about it. Nils, you're probably on the forefront of that. And you said working on it, but in rural settings and very under the radar. And I think that under the radar thing is the fact that it's hard to get compliance around this in places where people don't know these cultural elements. You're going to have to go somewhere like Finland where it is common, people understand it, and smoke sound has been practiced for a long time. You're seeing a resurgence of that. You're seeing more smoke saunas being built there. I think we're still 5 to 10 years away from that being really real as an option in North America. But we'll see. Maybe there's going to be somebody who does try and does make it happen.
Justin, I'll answer Mike Garrow's question here. Any resources out there to figure out how to keep a cold plunge running through the harsh winters here in the north if a natural body of water isn't available on the site? Totally. We've looked at this a lot, both in residential and commercial contexts. What I would say is it's far easier for you to consider some kind of structure that is surrounding the cold plunge. So this is not something where you have a huge 8-person cold plunge, that's custom built for the space. But if you're doing smaller tubs, we have to have that in a heated room. And that's going to support the plumbing for when you're filling and you're replacing the water in there for your cleanup in general. What we're looking for is an insulated floor system, an insulated room system that can help protect the mechanisms, the filtration, the coolers themselves in below freezing temperatures. We don't have a lot of residential or commercially viable options that I'm at least familiar with that can handle below freezing temperatures, where we're keeping the water cold and we're keeping the mechanisms from being too cold, that you can still hang your hat on for a successful business. So my suggestion for you would be to consider a structure that could accommodate that in an interior setup. Again, this could still be its own module. We've done that before. We've done saunas that have like a breezeway with a tiled room on the other side to accommodate a couple cold plunges. These are things we've explored in the past, and I think you might be able to find some ways to accommodate that too. I just don't think the answer is going to be like a half covered, gazebo or something that has kind of a screened room. I think on that, you're going to have to do a full send for a structure to accommodate that. And I think in the long term, your guests will be pleased.
Yeah, great words there. It's tough in harsh winter climates, Mike, to not turn all your pipes into ice cubes or your cold plunges into ice blocks. And so that's the tension there. You guys, what a joy to deep dive today, all things sauna villages, all things kind of emerging markets. And we are so honored that you spent some time with us. I will say, we do this a lot. We do this most months where we come in and have a conversation like this, deep dive into the market. If you're one of those people that's kind of in process to opening your doors and you need coaching, support, or thought around getting from those initial questions to doors open, I would invite you check out our Sauna Business Accelerator program. We work with companies all across North America. We've worked with companies internationally who are looking at these ideas and want a healthy, safe, committed group of people to help them get the doors open. Talk to Tom from our team there. He'd love to meet you, love to hear what you're trying to work on, and then show you the details of that 12-month program. We'd love to have you being a part of that. Derek, thank you so much today for diving in together, for lots of expertise from a guy who discovered sound later in life, who's now getting to help launch those spaces all over the country with really interesting clients everywhere. Thanks for sort of having your nose to the ground on sort of trends in industry. You're the guy who, like, whether it's fashion or sauna concepts, I know you know the bleeding edge of culture on all those things. So thanks for bringing that here with us today. And you guys who joined us, what an honor to be with you. Join along, follow along on all the things we're doing. And if you want to talk to our team about building the coolest sauna village in your neck of the woods, also, we would be happy to help. Derek would love to get on a call with you and design that space with you. So hope everybody is well. Thank you everybody for joining, and we will see you on the next one. Have a great day, you guys.